Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1046A, and today's date is August 11th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The U.S. Government Economic Recovery Propaganda is Exposed. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, as we can see, the situation here in the United States, the economy, it is declining rapidly. And we're getting more and more economic indicators showing us that this economic recovery that the United States government central bankers are trying to convince us of, it really doesn't exist. And when we look at each of the economic sectors, we can see that they're in contraction, they're declining, and we have a huge problem coming up very soon. Because what we've been tracking, what we've been looking at, is a recession/depression. It doesn't matter if the government announces it. Actually, even during the 2008, they really didn't announce that we're in a recession until a little bit later on. I mean, people knew things were wrong. People realized that people were getting laid off left and right. People were looking at their pensions saying, oh my God, I just lost half of my pension already. People lost their homes. But we had individuals out there saying that, don't worry, by the spring of 2009, everything will be fine. The real estate market will be back to where it was. Actually, Larry Young from the National Association of Realtors, he told us during the winter, real estate was going to return to the way it was. And it never did. So what we're seeing right now is this contraction, this decline of the entire economy. And the powers that be, the elite, the shadow government, the central bank, they're running out of time. And this is why we see an acceleration around the world for a push to cover up this entire economic collapse. And we can see as we move throughout this year, the situation is going to accelerate. It's going to get worse. Not just here in the United States, not just the economy, not just everything that we've been looking at, but the geopolitical, political situation around the world is just going to get worse and worse until we hear the Big Bang. Now, out in Greece, we see that China, they have purchased the largest port in Greece, China's COSCO shipping group. They completed an acquisition of 51% stake in the Greek port, and they are the controlling shareholder. And we see what China and Russia are doing right now. They're going into countries, they're spending a lot of money in these countries, helping the infrastructure, helping the economy of the country get back on its feet. Because the United States government central bankers, they've been destroying economies. And we see the opposite happening with China and Russia. The company paid about $311 million for its stake in this port, and they plan to increase their shares up to 67%. And this means more ships, more products coming into Greece. And we can see right now that most likely, in the end, Greece will definitely move away from the European Union, away from the US dollar, just like every other country is doing right now. Now, of course, we see throughout the European Union, many of the countries are saying, we don't want these sanctions with Russia anymore. Our economies are hurting. We need to get rid of them. But we can see the United States government central bankers, they're keeping them in the European Union, saying, you will not deviate from the plan whatsoever. You will keep these sanctions. Now, here in the United States, they're trying to keep the illusion alive. They're trying to convince everyone that everything is fine. And actually, back in February of 2016, when Obama came out and he was talking about how the economy was doing so well that if you don't believe it, you're peddling fiction. And he boasted about the job growth and the wage growth and how the economy is stronger, the job market was stronger. And everyone's going to get a bigger paycheck. Well, maybe just the central banks. those people in the U.S. government, maybe they're getting the bigger paychecks, but the rest of the people around the world, and also the insiders, the rest of the people around the world, around the country, I should say, they're getting smaller paychecks. And it turns out that the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, just revised the wage growth. Now, they came out and they did a downward revision in the first quarter of 2016 year on year, and real wage growth went from a positive 4.2% down to a negative 0.4%. That's a 4.6% swing. So when we hear this, we know the president was lying. This was created at that time to make it look like everything was great. And then what they do is they go back later and they revise everything lower, and hopefully nobody notices a thing. And this is what just happened. And this shows us right now that we see slow growth. We don't see steady gains anymore. And everything is being revised down right now. So there is no rising wage recovery. There is no job recovery. And when we look at the information provided to us, somebody's lying once again. Initial jobless claims, they dropped by 1,000 to 266,000 from a downwardly revised 267,000. And they continually put out the propaganda that we're at 43-year lows. Well, productivity is continually dropping. And they're trying to tell us that initial jobless claims are at 43-year lows. So what are all these workers doing? Well, basically nothing. But very interestingly is that we've seen this before. This is what it looks like right before the crash. The decline in jobless claims is following the exact same cycle as we saw in 1989, 2000, 2007. The bottom gets hit, and then claims rise and then surge. And this is what happens. The recession, job cuts. In a recession, supply sharply exceeds demand. Layoffs surge as businesses cut inventories of people and goods. Then we see a post-recession restocking. After the recession, job cuts slow. Some labor demand even starts to creep back in. As businesses were to lean and now need to restock, the jobless claims year over year is sharply negative. Then we see a mid-cycle inventory expansion. The business cycle shifts from being backward-looking and turns forward-looking. And then we have pre-recession end of inventory expansion. An equilibrium in labor demand has been reached, and existing staff levels meet expected demand. Layoffs then pick up as employers look for profit growth and production efficiencies. This pattern repeats itself every business cycle. And we saw the same things in 1989, 2000, 2007. And here we are at the same place, where we're going to see layoffs pick up, and we're going to see the initial jobless claims surge. We see that Macy's right now, they are closing 100 of its 728 stores with a loss of $1 billion in revenues. Again, we're seeing what is happening out in the real world. Retail is contracting. Think about all these people that are going to lose their jobs right now. We've had thousands upon thousands of stores close since the beginning of this year. And it's not improving. The U.S. Consumer Confidence, it has crashed to 3-month lows. And of course, the stock market continually rises. Now, we know the U.S. is out there trying to convince us that The economy is doing well. The unemployment rate is at 4.9%. We've added so many jobs. It's incredible. But every other economic indicator shows us something opposite that is happening, because it fits our model where people don't have jobs, so people aren't spending in retail. Retail is closing. Since retail is closing, factory orders are down, manufacturing is declining, the Baltic Dry Index declines, and it all follows the same pattern. We looked at the U.S. federal tax receipts. Well, they're just rising at 1.2% year over year. Now, during good times, these receipts are around 13 to 15%. Actually, back in June of 2013, they were at 13%. The last 6 times tax receipt growth was at this level, this weak level, we were already in a recession. And here we are once again. Right before 2008 hit, we were at the 1% year over year tax receipts. And then as soon as 2008 hit, we dropped to like negative 17%. Here we are, we're following the same patterns once again. This is going to be a disaster. So we can ignore these tax receipts, because with the U.S. tax receipts, we just proved the economic recovery is non-existent. It exposes the entire propaganda machine. You can manipulate statistics, you can manipulate the stock market, but the revenue coming into the government, the tax receipts, guess what? That's a tough one to manipulate. You can be done, but we can see right now we're following the same exact pattern, which means we're heading towards a major collapse. Now, gold investment demand has surged to a record in the first half of 2016, and it overtook the previous record during the 2009 financial crisis. We see Europe, we see people out in Asia, we see the U.S. People are purchasing gold and silver. They're very nervous. And with all this going on, Obamacare is on the verge of a collapse. And we can see that there's going to be a new open enrollment. They're not going to be able to get the numbers. Half of the co-ops have defaulted. We're seeing premiums rise once again. If we look at Blue Cross Blue Shield, they proposed an increase of 40% in Alabama, 60% in Texas. And we can see that Aetna and Anthem and many other insurers, they're out of the market right now. So all 5 of the nation's largest insurers say they are losing money on the exchanges and they need to get out. But don't worry, there's a bailout clause in Obamacare, and the government, or I should say the taxpayers, will pay them. And when we look around the country, we see premiums skyrocketing. South Carolina, they're going to increase by 13%. Florida, 2%. Pennsylvania, 10%. New York, 8%. Kentucky, 11%. Louisiana, 10%. Oklahoma, 41%. Utah, 9%. We're seeing this increase. This is not affordable. And the plans, they're garbage. Most of the people don't even get the benefits. And people are starting to realize this. And this is why no one is going into Obamacare, because they're saying, okay, I'm going to spend $1,800 on my family, and I can't even use the insurance until I hit a $5,000 deductible. So I just spent $5,000, $1,800 every month, and insurance didn't kick in at all. What a waste of money. So we're seeing the entire system contract and collapse all at the same time. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.